Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Abby and I like to talk about spooky things. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you 31 terrifying TikToks. If you guys like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up, click the subscribe button down below, and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I post Sundays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Central Time. Without further ado, let's get right on into the video. Our first TikTok's by the user betsybissonette.
I just got done with the showing for a house that was $40K under market value, but I now know why it hasn't sold. So my client sent me this house. It is a beautiful farmhouse. It's a 3-bed, 2-bath house. The house is on an acre of land. It has original woodworking that's like over 100 years old. It has the original floors, an updated kitchen. I am scratching my head why this house hasn't sold because I ran comps and it's $40K under market value. So I set a showing and I just went out to meet them. Everything is normal. It looks great. And then we go to the basement. We head down the stairs. I go first. And at like the 5th stair, I get so cold. It's March. It's like 50 degrees today. And the temperature drops like 10 degrees. I also have this very distinct feeling that someone or something is like watching me. But I continue on because I'm a professional and this is the last thing we have to see before these clients write this offer. I am very freaked out. I look to my left and there is this humongous china cabinet. And inside the china cabinet is those like ancient collectible china dolls. And a bunch of them are broken and cracked. And they're like staring. And like they are 100% possessed. So I see it and my client sees it and we go, oh, nope. And like run as fast as we can up the stairs. And I did turn the lights off and close the door on those possessed, haunted china dolls. My clients are not writing an offer on this house because it's literally haunted. But I did want to call the listing agent to like let them know and give them some feedback. So what I said was, hey, the house is great, priced well. However, I would recommend that the clients remove their personal belongings from the basement, like the china dolls and china cabinet. And he goes, yeah, I've gotten that feedback before, but the sellers really feel that those belong with the house. Okay. So yeah, that is 100% a haunted house and needs to be exorcised. Known exorcists, let me know. Cool. A really fun fact about real estate is you do not have to disclose haunted houses. You only have to disclose if someone was murdered on the property. The more you know. Have a good one. I'm gonna go cry.
I kind of think it would be fun to be a realtor just to like see all of these different kinds of houses. However, I don't think I could because the part of the job where you go into these houses on your own, and then also like the fact that you're supposed to lead people through these houses would freak me out because you don't know what kind of energy are in all of these random houses that you're setting foot into. And I've heard one too many realtor ghost stories about really haunted or like super spooky houses that they're in by themselves and crazy things happening. I just don't think I could do it. I would be so afraid, especially like I'd have this thing in my head like what if someone broke in and is hiding in the closet or something like that, if the owners like aren't living there anymore or something like that. I had a really crazy experience shortly after I moved out of a house that I had lived in with a few roommates. So we had all at this point moved out of the house, but we still had access to it because we had a few more days left on the lease. So it was just like, you know, going back and cleaning, and I had a package that was delivered there. So I went back one night to get it. I went inside the house and no one was there. Everyone was gone. Like I said, we'd moved out. No one was there cleaning at the time. The house was completely empty. I was there by myself grabbing the package. And I was feeling nostalgic because all the furniture was gone. And I made so many memories in that house. I wanted to like make a lap and do like a little video of it just empty so I could look back on it. And as I had finished walking around taking the video, I paused to watch it back. And keep in mind, I didn't have the sound on my phone, so I wasn't hearing myself walking around. The sound was off, but I was just watching the video to make sure it wasn't super shaky, because I have a tendency to be all shaky when I'm walking. But I'm watching the video back, and all of a sudden I hear footsteps coming from the back room. Again, no one was there. The house was empty. No one was home. And I hear footsteps coming from the back room. I booked it out of there so fast, and I locked up the door and I went back to my car, and I sat in the car for a second, and I was waiting because there was glass in the front door. I was thinking I was gonna see a shadow or something. Nothing. And no one was there. I texted everyone to confirm, no one was there, and there's these footsteps coming from the back room, and it was horrifying. So I don't know, I would feel like that would happen every time I'm in a house. That's my long-winded way of saying I don't think I could be a realtor and just walk around all these random houses by myself, because I even had a weird experience at a house that I lived in. Our next two TikToks are with the user katie.ginella.
So I just saw a girl post about how her house is haunted, so I have to tell this story about our house in San Diego. It was really hard to get this house. We had to apply with a ton of other applicants and put an offer in, and also include a letter with a picture of our family. So we move in, and the whole house was empty except in the downstairs utility closet there was a medical file, and that's the only thing left in the house. And it was for a woman named Lily, and she had brain tumors. I'm going to tell my realtor to tell her realtor it's here and have her come get it, or I can give it to her, mail it to her, whatever. So weird stuff started to happen. So our light switches in that house were the paddle ones, where it goes click, 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 click. So I'd be in the kitchen cooking, and all of a sudden I'd hear a click, click, and the lights would go on and off. And I'd always be well, that's weird. I'd be walking down the hallway, and the lights click, click. Weird. At that time, Matt was traveling a lot for work, and we were home alone, just me and the kids a lot. And one night I was woken up in the middle of the night around 12:31 a.m. to hearing somebody fall down the stairs and go back up the stairs. It's oh, these kids are up too late. I'm going to get up. I'm going to catch one of these kids up too late. So I got out of bed. I went, and there was no one in the hallway. And I was that's weird, right? So I was well, they must have gone to their room. So I went into Gavin's room. He's asleep. Kylie's room, she's asleep. Then I saw that TikTok had this filter that sensed energy, and it would put a thing over. Okay, I'll show you. I'll just show you. Watch. Stay with me.
Do you see this? You see me? I'm giving off this whatever.
Night, Matt and I were going to bed, and our main bedroom was the bedroom area, a long wooden hallway, and then the bathroom. I was laying in bed. Matt was in the bathroom brushing his teeth. And he was walking back this way through the hallway towards me, towards the bed. And I said, oh, Matt, you forgot to turn off the lights. We heard a click, lights went off. Thank you, Lily. And the lights went click, click. So at this point, I'm telling my realtor, you've got to tell this realtor, they have to come get this medical file. Whatever is attached to it, I want it gone, whatever. She comes back to me and she's so Lily died. And the reason that they accepted you guys when you submitted your application with all the others, with your letter and your family photo, is because they had a dog that was exactly your dog. So does she think I stole her dog? Okay, so since you like the video of our haunted house, let me tell you one of the things that happened in that house amongst millions of things. So Bandon at this time, who's now 8, was around 3 and 4 and 5 when we lived in that house. He's always been an old soul. He's always had something about him. And if you knew Bandon, you know this to be true. So he would go in his room and he would tell us that he was playing with his friend. And me, I'm thinking it's an imaginary friend. And my older kids didn't have that, but I'm he's got a vast imagination. So this could be it, right? So one day Matt and I go in there and we're tucking him into bed, and he was oh, I was just playing with Kevin. And I was who's Kevin? And he was oh, Kevin is my friend and he plays with me. And I'm oh, okay, cool. So that never comes up again. I'm this is his imaginary friend. So then another night we're tucking him in, and he tells Matt and I, I'm playing with Kevin. And Kevin is Kevin's in Daddy's family, but he's older than Daddy, but he's a baby. And Matt and I were what? So we go into our room, we talk about it. Turns out Matt's uncle, his favorite person in the whole world, his uncle, who died the day before Bandon was born, had a son named Kevin, who was older than Matt. He was born before Matt and died at 18 months old from croup. By the way, we've never told Bandon about Kevin. No, I didn't even know about Kevin. So Bandon would definitely not have known about Kevin. So Bandon told us he was playing with Matt's cousin who passed away when he was a baby. Because Bandon said he's older than Daddy, but he's a baby. That house, something about that house.
I absolutely believe her stories that the house was haunted and they had these experiences, but I will say I don't know if I believe that these TikTok filters are actually a way to catch ghosts. I don't think that that's the case. Definitely anything's possible. Anything can happen. I mean, people catch ghosts on cameras all the time, but I don't think we can use TikTok filters as a way to determine if there's a ghost in your house or not. I don't think that that's an accurate thing, but I always do find it fascinating when people are able to kind of track a ghost back to someone else in their family lineage. Like, oh, my cousin's brother's uncle passed, and oh my god, this must be them. You know, I always think it's really interesting when people are able to trace it back and figure out who exactly is haunting them or co-living with them. Our next TikTok's by the user Mikey Grimm 13.
This is the only story that I've ever received where it actually made me stop recording halfway through and feel like I had to walk around my house and make sure that all the doors were locked. So, of course, I can't validate any of this, so this story is for entertainment purposes only, but I think you're going to enjoy this one. So, a follower sent me this story a few weeks ago, and he asked me to not use his real name, so we're going to call him Matt. Now, Matt said that this started happening in late 2020 after he, his wife, and their 6-year-old son moved into a rental house just outside of a small town in Ohio. Now, the house wasn't like this ancient, it wasn't this like creepy Victorian home with this deep, dark history. Nothing like that. It was built in the early 90s and looked completely normal. Now, for the first few weeks, everything was completely fine, right? Then one night, out of nowhere, during dinner, his son casually looked over at his parents and he asked a question. He looked at his mom and he said, "Why does the tall man stand in my doorway every single night?" And at first they assumed, he was talking about a dream. His mother laughed and asked him what tall man are you talking about? And the kid shrugged and he's just like, the one with the broken smile in my room. And that phrase immediately bothered the both of them and it creeped them out, of course, not just because it sounded scary, but because it was such a strange thing for a 6-year-old to say and oddly descriptive. And they asked him what do you mean by that? And the boy said that the man's mouth looked like it was hurt. And then he went right back to eating his dinner and didn't say anything. So over the next few weeks, he kept mentioning the man, always casually, never seemed scared of him. Sometimes he'd mention seeing him standing in the hallway, sometimes, in the backyard near the tree line. And once he pointed to an empty corner of the living room and he asked why the man wasn't standing there anymore. Now, Matt and his wife became concerned enough that they considered taking him to a therapist and even their local pastor that they became really close with. But then things got even weirder. One night around 2 a.m, Matt woke up because he heard his son talking through the baby monitor that they still used as an intercom just in case. And he thought the kid was, maybe having a dream and talking to himself. But when he listened a little bit closer, he realized that his son was having a conversation. And there would be a long pause, and then his son would answer, and then another pause, and then another answer from his son. Someone was talking back and forth with him. So Matt got out of bed and walked to his son's room, and as soon as he opened the door, the talking immediately stopped. And his son was sitting upright in his bed, staring toward the closet, wide awake, and Matt had asked him who he was talking to. And his son answered him immediately, and he just said, "The tall man." And Matt checked the room. There was, of course, nobody there. There was nothing around. And his son seemed completely calm, like he wasn't bothered by this whatsoever. And then he pointed toward the closet and he said something that made Matt realize that this wasn't some just imaginary friend or some type of child's imagination situation going on. His son easily said, "The man said you weren't supposed to hear him tonight." And Matt's like, "Dude, what the hell?" So the next morning, Matt asked his son to describe the man in detail. And the description that he gave stayed very consistent the entire time. He was tall, extremely thin, dark clothing, pale face, huge smile, and eyes that looked wet is exactly how his son described it. And that was the word that the kid kept using over and over, was his eyes are wet looking. Not shiny, not bright, wet. And that's very important, apparently. Now, a few days later, Matt's wife noticed something even more odd. Whenever their son drew pictures, there was a figure hidden somewhere in the image of the son's drawing. Whether they were at the park, at the store, at school, standing outside the house playing, always the same figure and always looking like it was watching them. So eventually they decided to do something a little bit unorthodox, and they had a friend of theirs who had an older son who was an artist, and he was in art school, and he was a great artist, and he actually spent time over the summer interning at the local police department as a sketch artist. So the artist agreed to meet with the kid, and Matt said the sketch session lasted about an hour, and the artist would ask questions like, he would ask questions about the figure, and the boy would make very strong corrections, like, no, the face is thinner, no, the smile is bigger, no, the eyes are wrong, no, the forehead is too normal, like very, very descriptive. And it was over and over until finally the boy said, "That's him." And he said it very excitedly and proud. So the artist later admitted that the drawing absolutely disturbed him, which I'm going to show you. Now, not because it looked realistic, but because of how specific the child was. Children usually change details, but his son did not, and not even once. So the sketch was taken home, and Matt said that they left it on the kitchen counter that night. And around 3 a.m, his son started screaming, crying, screaming. It was the first time that he had done this, really. And they ran into his room, and the boy was pointing at his bedroom door, and he was hyperventilating, crying. He was unable to speak. And after several minutes, he finally got the words out, and he said the tall man had been standing there. But this time, he wasn't smiling. This time, the tall man was very angry. And when they asked why, the boy pointed towards the kitchen, at the picture pretty much, and he said, "Because you drew his face." Now, the next morning, Matt found something even more strange, if you could believe it or not. This story gets a little weirder. The sketch was no longer on the kitchen counter where they had left it. They searched the entire house, and eventually they found it in a closet laying face down on the floor. Now, nobody admitted to moving it. Nobody even remembered going into the closet. But a few days later, the sightings had eventually stopped, and they stopped completely. There was no more tall man being seen, no more conversations, no more drawings. There was nothing. Now being relieved, they moved on, right? Now months had passed, and then one evening, Matt was organizing old boxes in his basement, and he opened a storage tote that had been the belongings of the previous owners. And most of it was junk, like old magazines and receipts and old mail and everything like that, random papers, whatever. But at the very bottom was a photograph, and the picture appeared to show a family standing in front of the house sometime in the mid to late 90s. And the image, the quality was kind of crappy. It was, a little worn, you could tell, but there was something in the background, and standing near the tree line was a very tall, dark, thin figure, just looked like it was looking right at the camera, photobombing the family. And Matt said that he initially assumed that it was maybe a trick of the light, until he noticed something else, that the face, even though it was a little blurry and even a little distorted, it appeared to have the same unnaturally wide smile, and the same smile that his son had described for months. And now, according to Matt, his son had never seen the photograph before, and the picture now stays locked inside of a safe inside of Matt's bedroom, and his son is older now and barely remembers any of it, but every once in a while, usually when they're driving past wooded areas at night, he'll stare out the window for a little too long, and he'll quietly ask a question that still terrifies Matt and his wife. And he'll say, do you ever think that he ever found his face again? And Matt said that he's never asked what that means or who he's talking about because he's afraid that his son might actually know the answer and it may jog up some memories. So let me know what you guys think in the comments.
I'm not gonna lie, I think it's a huge red flag that the spirit is like so upset about people knowing what it looks like. I think the police sketch artist idea was absolutely brilliant, but yeah, I mean, I don't think there was any green flags about this entity through any point in the story, but major red flag that it's like this entity's getting mad at the kid for revealing what it looks like to the parents and other people. And I don't know, I don't see anything good coming from interacting with the spirit. The image is absolutely horrifying, and I'm astonished that the kid wasn't like super terrified by it just looking at that face all the time. He definitely was reacting like a lot more chill than I would have been if I experienced that as a child. But yeah, I don't know, it kind of gives a little bit demonic in my opinion. Our next TikTok's with user jessokish.
What's your most terrifying paranormal experience? I'll go first. Mine was about a year ago. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I wake up and I think I hear one of my kids yelling for me. So I like lay here for a minute trying to come to my senses, and I hear it again. And it sounds like my 5-year-old, and he's saying, "Hey mommy, can you come here? I need you." And I'm like, "Hey buddy, what's going on?" Because it sounds like he's like right outside my bedroom door, and it's cracked like this much, but I can't see him, but I can see that it's dark. And he says, "I need you. I had a bad dream." And I say, "Okay buddy, just come on in here and lay down with me. We'll snuggle, and you can just sleep in here with me the rest of the night." And he goes, "No, I need you to come here." And I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of weird because this is the kind of kid, he does not like the dark. If he needs me, he comes running in here at night and gets right in bed. So I just say, "Okay, buddy, just come here." And he keeps arguing and getting angrier and angrier. And eventually it gets to the point where he is outside the door, screaming, hitting the door, throwing a fit, but the door never moves. Like, it's already open. It doesn't ever move. So finally I'm like, okay, I'm coming. I'll be right there. And I go to sit up. And when I put my hand down, on my 5-year-old. He was already in bed with me. So whatever that was, as soon as I touched him, it stopped. Whatever it was trying to lure me out of my room into the dark by myself at 3 a.m. It was horrifying.
That's definitely a mimic trying to bait her into coming out of a safe zone. I'm so glad she figured out that it wasn't her son before she actually got up. I mean, that's so creepy. It's like trying to manipulate and convince her to go out there as her son is literally laying right next to her. I don't know if I would be able to stay in that house at that point. I'd be like, there's an entity that is pretending to be my child's son to trick me into, I don't know, harming me? Who knows what would have happened if she'd gone out there. Our next TikTok's with the user b.tchesloveleah.
Y'all, the weirdest shit just fucking happened to me, and I've been telling all my homies that I have such bad vibes in my apartment. So Kingston fell asleep next to me on the couch when I was reading my book. So he fell asleep and I'm like, damn, I'm tired. So I fall asleep too. Well, I wake up to Sam. He's at the gym, by the way. Like, when we fell asleep, he was at the gym. So I wake up to Sam like, babe. And I hop up. At this point, I'm fully awake. Like, I stand up off my couch fully awake. And I'm like, what? And he's like, did you not go do laundry? And I was like, fuck, no, like, I was gonna go to my mom's, we fell asleep, I'm sorry. And he was like, whatever, I'm about to go take a shower. I'm like, okay. So then I sit back down for like 5 minutes. And I kind of doze off, but like not all the way. Anyway, when I realize I'm dozing off, I pick my head back up. And I'm like, Sam, because I don't hear the shower going. Mind you, at this point, every light in the house is on. And so I'm like, Sam, like, where are you at? I even text him, and I'm like, I didn't want to like get up, and I'm like, where are you? Because he was just here. I was just talking about a full conversation with him. I was in the living room. He was back down the hallway into the bathroom. And I'm like, Sam, no answer. So I get up, I go back there, look in the bathroom, he's not in there. Go in the bedroom, he's not in there. Kingston's room, he's not in there. Kitchen, right behind me, whatever, not in there. So I'm like, what the fuck? So I call him. And I'm like, where did you go? And he was like, what do you mean, I'm just finishing up at the gym? I'm sorry, what? And, like, not last night, but the night before, I was home by myself because Sam works till 7 a.m. So most nights I'm home by myself. Anyway, it's just me awake. Kingston and I already put him to bed. Well, I'm on FaceTime with Hope, and me and her are talking, whatever. Well, my bedroom is right there, that door at the end of the hallway. My bedroom is that room. My door is cracked, the bathroom door is shut, Kingston's door is shut enough to where he can just kind of pull it open when he wakes up. My door's the only door wide open. Well, like right outside my door, mid-conversation with Hope, I hear like a growling outside of my door. Mind you, we don't have pets. I hear growling, like loud-ass growling, to the point I stopped what I was talking about, and I don't know, I had like fucking, I swear to God, every hair on the back of my neck was standing up. I'm like, and Hope's just being quiet, and I'm fucking trying to check it out, and I'm like, actually, fuck this, shut the door. Anyway, heard growling in my hallway the night before last, and mind you, it was fucking late as shit, way later than I normally stay up. Anyway, I got fucking demons in my house. I got demons in my house, and I'm scared. Don't bite me.
This is such a common theme where someone thinks someone came home from work or the gym or whatever it is, and they have a full interaction with them, and it turns out it's not them. Or maybe not even a full interaction. They hear them do all of their normal stuff, like downstairs, like putting their keys away and maybe making dinner or something, and then it turns out that they were never home. I'd be freaking out. I'd be like, am I imagining things? Am I hallucinating? Or is there some kind of an evil mimic in here that is like trying to trick me into something? And you know, they say like not to interact with mimics, but how are you supposed to not sometimes if you genuinely believe it's your person or, you know, your mom or your kid or something like that? We'll get into that in another story that's coming up very soon. But it's like sometimes you have no choice but to interact with them because you have not yet realized that it is not the person you think it is. Our next to talk user, alliecheyswrld.
I might have seen that I posted on my story a few weeks ago that something scary happened to me, and I wasn't sure when I would be ready to tell y'all about it. I'm finally ready. I put off telling this story because it scared me so freaking much, but I'm not at home right now and it's daytime, so I'm gonna tell y'all the story. I was born, raised, and still live here in the Appalachian Mountains, and I recently moved back home to my family land. I moved out of a really haunted house back home onto haunted land. I knew that the land is haunted. It's been haunted. Everybody that lives in my little holler area, all my family members, we have all experienced weird things. It's been crazy since I moved back home. All kinds of stuff has been going on. So I woke up in the middle of the night. I wasn't sure what time it was because it was really dark outside. That's all I knew, was that it was still nighttime. So I got up and I walked down the hallway to my bathroom, and I wasn't using a flashlight, and I didn't turn any of the overhead lights on or anything. I was just using the dim light on my phone screen, and it was even black because I had it on sleep mode. So if you know what I'm talking about, on my iPhone, it's like a black screen. So I was dimly lit the hallway to light my way to the bathroom so I could go use the bathroom and go back to bed without losing any sleep, because if you know what I'm talking about, I just didn't want to lose any of my sleepy. The bathroom, and most of my kids were home and they were both in bed still asleep. As I came out of the bathroom, I could have swore I heard my son crying my name. It sounded like he was saying, "Mommy," something was upsetting him, something was wrong. And so I thought I seen him standing there in his doorway. Like I said, I shined my phone light, but it was barely lit up. And I just looked back down at my phone, and I noticed that it was 5:30 a.m. And I was like, okay, it's early enough to get up, whatever. So I said, "What's wrong, baby? What's wrong?" And he didn't say anything back. And so I kept saying it. I said his name, sorry. And I kept saying it. I was like, "What's wrong, sweetie? What's wrong? Are you okay? What's wrong?" Finally, I turned on my flashlight because it was dark, and I just wanted to see if he was okay, and there he laid in his bed, still sound asleep. So he was not standing in his doorway, and he was not saying "Mommy." I was hearing things. And if you know anything about Appalachia, you know the rules are, if you hear something, no, you didn't. Yes, that applies inside as well as it does outside. And I, unfortunately, responded to this thing numerous times. I kept saying, "What is it? What is it? What is it? What's wrong?" And as I realized that he was still laying there in bed, it just suddenly hit me. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? And what do you do after that? I don't know. So I was scared. I didn't want to wake my kids up, and I just went and laid back down. And I laid there so scared for a long time until I eventually, I guess, fell back asleep, because I woke back up and the sun was up and my kids were still asleep. And that's actually the last scary thing that has happened to me, so hopefully nothing else happens. but if it does, I will keep y'all updated.
So here, this is the example that I was just referencing. How do you know not to interact with it if you don't realize what it is at first? I mean, she thinks that this is her son, and then it turns out that it is in fact not, and she's just been interacting and responding to this mimic, but it's because she didn't know what it was. You know, if you know it's a mimic, you can ignore it and pretend you didn't hear anything. Like, if you hear something, no, you didn't. But if you think it's not a mimic, if you think it's just your son, and you interact with it, what, are you doomed? Like, I would be overthinking everything at that point. Our next TikTok user, taryndelaniesmith.
For the last 8 months, I've been renovating this 235-year-old farmhouse in upstate New York. And hang on, because I want to tell you something, but I don't want the ghosts to hear me. You think I'm joking, but the idea of offending the ghosts by talking about them in front of them is scary enough for me to have to walk out into this field every time something paranormal happens so that I can tell people about it from the safety of this field. Yeah. I just got out of my car. I came home from the city and I have a grocery bag in my hand. I'm walking up to the front door. And as I get to the front door, I hear as clear as day a man's voice go, "Hello," just like that. "Hello." And I stop dead in my tracks because I'm like, is there a contractor here? And it sounds like it's coming from the window by my living room. I'd show you, but I don't want them to hear me gossiping. So I do a little bit of investigating. Windows are closed. There's no one around. But I am telling you guys, I heard it as clear as I'm speaking to you. "Hello." That's what it sounded like. Not menacing, just kind of like a welcome home. Got the bug. I recognize that not everyone's going to believe this story, and that's fine. I understand why you wouldn't believe this. But if it helps to back up my tale, my husband, who's a relative skeptic, I would say, when I finally walk in the door, my husband is coming towards the front door from the dining room. And I immediately tell him the story. And I'm like, I heard a man's voice clear as day say, "Hello." And I thought for sure it was you. But it looks like it wasn't you because you were in the dining room. And he goes, "No, it wasn't me." Get this next part, guys. Get this next part. He goes, "No, it wasn't me. But I was coming to greet you at the door because I thought I heard you talking to a man outside." I'm not crazy. I know it. Okay. I'm just saying I needed the validation. He heard it. He heard it. I'm not crazy. They are my friends. And so it's all chill. I get a little spooked sometimes. But, hello. Just gonna come in the front now. Yeah. That's the story. But we're cool. We're all friends. It's a vibe.
I believe this is the same creator that told us a story about how her house ghosts returned her engagement ring that fell down the drain of the shower to her. And if I'm remembering this correctly, it seems like just overall she kind of has a cute relationship with these spirits. It's like she doesn't want to really draw attention to the fact that she's aware of them, so she like whispers her stories and like runs away into a field to go tell her stories away from the house. But really they just kind of coexist, and I think if anything it's the best kind of house ghosts you can have. They just kind of mind their own business. They're like silly and living in their own little ghosty life, but they're not trying to hurt you or anything. I think it's probably the best scenario if you have house ghosts. Yeah, it seems like there's just a very wholesome balance between her and the ghosts, that it's like they kind of mind their own business, but then sometimes they interact and it's never anything scary. But it's so funny how she like runs away to go talk about these spirits because she doesn't want to like gossip about them in front of them. Our next 5 TikToks are by the user kaylajean.h.
Hi, I grew up in a haunted house, so I thought it was time for me to finally share some of the experiences I've had and just like what it was like growing up in a haunted house. Obviously, if you don't believe in the paranormal, then don't watch this video because what I experienced was very real and it affected me and my family very deeply. To begin, I truly believe that I brought something into my home because of the Ouija board, and I want to create this video so I can spread knowledge that this is not a game, The Ouija board is very real, and it caused a lot of issues for me and my family when I played it. And now I started playing it when I was in the 3rd grade. It was introduced as a game. It was sold at Target. I would play it at my friend's house. My mom never allowed it in the house, but because we weren't supposed to do it, we would do it at other friends' houses. And I played this all throughout my childhood, talked to a lot of entities, at least from what we thought. And it all kind of flipped a switch when I was in middle school. So this particular time we played was during a time when a family friend of ours had committed, he had passed away. And so we wanted to speak to him, and we thought we were speaking to him. We would ask it questions. He would, from what we thought it was him when we were talking to him. Whoever was on the other side of the board knew every single personal thing that nobody else would know. And to give you context, when we were playing, it was my friends and we had our hands on the board, and then my friend's aunt, who was the adult supervising, she would ask the board the questions, and it would be answers that none of us knew. Only she would know because she was very close to this person. And it felt like we were speaking to him. So we continued on, and then we were like, okay, we're going to go to dinner. We'll come back and talk later. So we closed out the board, went out to dinner, came back, and we opened the board up to speak again. And when we opened the board back up, the room felt completely different. The energy was different. When you would ask it questions, the way it moved was different. Like, overall, I think everybody kind of felt like we were no longer talking to this family friend that we thought we were talking to. And so, but we continued to ask it the similar questions to kind of test whatever we were talking to. And it would come up with some very scary answers. I can't remember specifically because like I'm 27 now. I was like 12 when this happened. I just can't remember exactly what was said, but I just remember the answers we were getting was very dark. And I distinctively remember it had said this one thing that really scared us, and we were like, we're closing the board out, goodbye, do not want to talk to you again. And after this happened, that's when everything kind of unfolded. I can't remember if it was the same night or like a few days later, but I had come home late night to my home, and I was on the phone with my friend at night. And it was probably like 3 a.m, and I was in my room, and I went to the bathroom. And when I came back, my bed was pulled into the middle of the room. To give you context, my bed was one of those beds that was like kind of high up off the ground, and it had 6 drawers to fill clothes. So it was very heavy, real wood bed. And then there was a bunch of clothes in there, and I had carpet at the time. And to pull this bed, like, it was hundreds of pounds, this bed. So there was no way. Nobody was in the room. Nobody was awake. Everybody was asleep in my home. And immediately when I walked in and saw my bed in the middle of the room, my gut knew that something was wrong, and this was like a paranormal thing. The energy had shifted in my room. It was like almost like colder temperature-wise. I know a lot of people say that, but it really was, like, the temperature was different in my room. It felt icky. I hung up with my friend. I immediately went into my parents' room, and I was terrified. I was absolutely dumbfounded, could not explain it. And my parents came in my room, and they couldn't explain it. I remember my dad was trying to push my bed back, and he was like, he's very skeptical. He never believed in ghosts. I don't think he's a very logical man. And so he was trying to come up with all these reasons to why this could have happened and asking me questions. And I was like, I swear I did not move this bed. And my mom just instinctively was like, let's pray. And we prayed. And I remember I ended up sleeping in my parents' bedroom that night. But after that night, a lot of things started happening in my house. And it was gradual, like years would go on and certain things would happen year after year. And it wasn't until I moved out of the house and I was like, I definitely brought something into this home, and it was really hard to get rid of. This video is getting really long, so I'll probably break this up into multiple parts, but if you want to hear more stories, let me know. I really wanted to create this video as a cautionary tale against the Ouija board to please be careful and to just watch out because you really don't know what you're talking to. Part 2 of living in a haunted house. It's really hard to like start somewhere because there was a lot of things that happened, and it wasn't until you looked back that you kind of added it all up. But in general, I remember just feeling this overall presence in my room a lot of the time where it just felt like there was this, I don't know why I want to say man, but it felt like a male energy, I guess, that would stand over my bed. And I remember feeling something there, but I would be too scared to open my eyes. And then when I would finally open my eyes, nothing would be there. I think throughout middle school and high school, there would just be small things that happened, but I remember specifically once I started getting fascinated by tarot cards, things really picked up. And I don't know if this was a coincidence or there's something with the tarot cards. We'll leave it there. One night specifically, I want to say it was probably like, I don't know, 12 a.m. I had just gotten off a night shift at work, took a shower, was eating a late dinner after work, and I remember I was watching Grey's Anatomy on my laptop, and I'm sitting at my table, and behind me, to give you context, I was sitting here. Probably here, there's a countertop, all right? And on this countertop, there was those hydro flasks, like a white hydro flask. And I'm watching. And out of the, I feel this like that. And I look, and the fucking water bottle is flying towards my head, like past my head, and hits the cabinets in front of me. Immediately, Immediately, I knew there was something very wrong. And we don't have AC in our house, so there was no draft, no wind, no doors open. I was inside in my kitchen. There's nothing that could have, I was the only one up, everybody was asleep. There was nothing that could have pushed that off and make it fly that far. So I, as one does, starts crying, and my dad comes running out because he's getting ready to beat my ass because I'm making so much noise at midnight. And when he sees my face, like, I could tell he was angry, and he sees how ghost white I am, and obviously I had it written on my face, and he was like, what happened? And I told him I was like literally bawling, crying, because it just like, it scared me, honestly. I was in my early 20s at this time, to give context. Yeah, that really shook me. And I think there was a long period of time where my dad didn't really, like, he heard us when we had these kind of stories, but he didn't think necessarily that it was a ghost. I don't know if he really believed us. And I remember this was like a point where he was like, okay, there's something here. So yeah, that was the most, like, quote unquote violent experience I had. Other than that, up until that point, it didn't really bother me because I got so used to this weird vibe, weird feelings in my house, that it just didn't bother me until that happened. And I remember being like really unsettled So it did eventually stop, and I've been trying to like word this the right way. To put it plain and simply, it stopped when I moved out. And there was a few things that had happened when I moved out that I do feel like played a part. So I'll just like break it down. Number one, I was kind of getting out of that new age spirituality stuff. Just being honest, I was getting rid of my tarot cards when I was moving out because I just didn't feel like I needed to bring it with me. I just had this feeling like I needed to get rid of it. And so I did. When I lived in that house, we did so many things to try and get rid of whatever was in that house. Like, my mom had called a medium at some point, and I don't know what kind of medium she was, to be honest. And I can go into detail in another video, but whatever she did, it did not last long. It's whatever it was came right back. We went to so many crystal stores and asked people who worked there, like, what can we buy to get rid of whatever was in the house. And eventually I just kind of stopped trying to communicate. I think there was a part of me that was so fascinated with it. And when I just kind of realized, you know, I don't know what I'm talking to. I don't know what I'm dealing with, because I definitely feel like there's something there, but I can't see it. And so when you're kind of putting your hand in a hole and you don't know what's on the other side of the wall, you just don't know. And so I think I came to this realization that I need to stop playing with fire here. And when I stopped playing with fire, I stopped getting burnt. And I moved out. I did start learning about the Bible and learning about the power of Jesus Christ. And so I think that also played a part of it in how I don't feel like anything's attached to me now. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer. But yeah, that's just my truth and my experience. So yeah. Growing up in a haunted house, part 3 or 4 now. I don't even know. So there was a long period of time when things were only really happening to my sister and I, and we would have small experiences here and there, and we would tell our parents, like, there's something in this house, but they never took it on because they never experienced anything, but they knew there was something there because whenever we would have friends over, a lot of the time they would call their parents in the middle of the night to come bring them home. So again, that's also kind of a common thing when you're young. Like, I don't know if you guys experienced that when you were little, you would sleep over at somebody's house and like be like, Mom, come pick me up. So that happened too. So it really changed my mom's perspective when she was home alone one day. My dad's a commercial fisherman, so he's gone a lot of the time. And so she was home alone. She was laying in bed, and the bed's like here. And then, sorry, I had a little too much coffee this morning. And there's an armoire. I'm like shaking. Oh my God. There's an armoire like right here with a TV. And then there's a door next to it into the bathroom. So she's watching TV and that door was closed. And she remembers that the door handle, like it was one of like these kind of door handles, and she said, I'm so sorry, I'm so shaky, I had way too much coffee this morning, and the door handle like did like a slow turn, like somebody was on the other side, she was home alone, slow turn, and then opened the door, and it slowly moved back up. And she said that alone, and then the door opened, that just like really freaked her out, because like obviously door handles don't move that way. So that was her experience. I know that seems like small, but once that happened to her, she was like, okay, I fully believe you guys. And then I want to say it was like a few years later, my dad and I were the only ones at home. I don't know where my mom and my sister were. It was a while ago. But I was in my room and I was like on the computer doing whatever. And my dad comes running in my room and like, he's ghost white. Like my dad is one of those guys who just doesn't really show a ton of emotion. Like, so when he comes in my room looking like he did, I was like, you good? What's wrong? And he's like, did you just come into my bathroom? And I was like, no, I've been in my room. And he was like, I was watching TV in their bedroom, and there was a woman who ran into the bathroom, he said. And he went into the bathroom and there was nobody there. And he was so shaken from this experience because he thought it was me that like ran into the bathroom, and it wasn't. So after that happened, that was when my mom was like, we're calling a medium and we're going to try to get somebody to come out here and figure out what the hell is going on. And again, now I'm at 3 minutes. Gosh, I can ramble on forever. And I'll tell you about the medium in the next video. But yeah, so those were the 2 experiences that my parents had. I feel like a lot of people think that I lived in like the Conjuring house, and like that's a show, like that's a movie, like it didn't happen like that. It was just little experiences that we all had that added up into one thing, and it all started with the Ouija board. So I hope that this story wasn't like disappointing, but it's just real life. Like it's not a movie. Living in a haunted house part 5. I'm going to try to pack everything into one video, so this one's going to be a little longer. So my sister and I would always have similar experiences. Like we would always see things in the corner of our eye, like moving, and obviously you'd turn and it wasn't there. So I think we chalked that up to our imagination a lot of the time. But when both of us experienced this dark figure like over our bed, Obviously, like, that's kind of weird. And then I talked to my sister the other day, and she was mentioning that she would see this red figure in her room with no face, and it would just, like, stand in the corner of her room in, like, certain locations. And then she experienced a lot of the darker stuff, like sleep paralysis. She said, like, she felt like something was, like, pressing down on her chest at night, and she, like, couldn't breathe. So she experienced kind of that side of things. Now, I will say she struggled with a lot of depression growing up. So I'm just going to leave that there. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything, but I do feel like maybe she was spiritually attacked in some way, on a deeper level than maybe I was. She told me this one instance when she was in her room, and, you know, when you go to school, you have your backpack, and you have, like, those really heavy textbooks. So she had, like, 2 textbooks and a binder or something like that in her backpack. And it was on one side of the room, and all of a sudden it got dragged onto the other side of the room. Obviously, nobody was in the room except for my sister, and so she saw that. So I remember that was, like, we all ran into the room because she was, like, screamed, and we were like, what the fuck happened? So that was weird. Another odd thing is we have this little dog named Sadie. Sadie is an interesting dog because she's one of those dogs where you look in her eyes and she's kind of, like, human-like. Like, she looks right through you when you look at her. She's a Havanese Shih Tzu. And she started doing this, like, panic attack thing at night whenever she would, like, get ready for bed. And she would just start breathing really heavy, and she would crawl in your chest and just, like, stare at you. And she would, like, stand on your chest and breathe really hard, and then she would run to the door and start scratching at my parents' door at night and to be, like, let out. And we would let her out, and then she would be okay. But, like, she did this, like, every night. She would have these, like, panic attacks. And so we didn't really know what it was. She's perfectly healthy. We would take her to the vet. To this day, we still don't really know what would go on with her. So now I'll tell you about the medium that came to our house and what happened there. She basically went through each room and told us about, like, the energy read that she had on each room. Like, my parents, she was like, I could tell you have a lot of deep discussions in this room. There's a lot of vibrant energy. She went into my room and said that it was very positive, light energy. Again, I don't know if any of this is true. I know I talked to my mom last night about it, and she was like, I call BS on all of it. Especially when the woman went into my sister's room, and, like, my sister had just come, it's like ciatas are going at it. My sister had just come home from college at this point, and so she didn't have anything on her walls. It was right after COVID hit. So it was just one of those times where my sister was, like, just moving in, and this woman was like, there's nothing on her walls, like, there's very dark energy in this room, and it feels like it's attached to my sister. And she just kind of focused in on my sister's room and just was talking about that it was attached to her in her room. And so she did this ritual where she supposedly cleared it out and, like, removed any detachments from my sister in her room. And honestly, I don't think that worked at all. Even my sister was like, I don't even think that did anything. I don't know what the heck that was. And then I remember when the woman was coming out of our house, she was kind of, like, talking to each one of us. And for instance, for me, she told me specifically to rise my kundalini energy. At the time, I had no idea what that is. I still really don't know what that is. She told my dad, she looked at his eyes and said that he was, like, from a different planet. I don't know. Once she said that, I know that my parents were like, this lady's insane. So to this day, it was just kind of a weird experience. After she left, I don't think anything really changed. Like, I'm pretty sure we still experience stuff, because I was talking to some of my friends about it, and it turns out that they had experiences in my house and they remember certain things. So definitely this medium did not do much. So I'll tell you some things from my mom's perspective. I was on the phone with her last night and asking her questions. We went to this crystal store, and the woman who owned the crystal store was, she was Christian, but we were telling her what was going on with the house, and she gave us a prayer to just say anytime we experienced anything. And so my mom kept this like piece of paper with the prayer like right by our front door. And I didn't know this until yesterday, but I guess she would say this prayer every morning, every night, like religiously. And she believes that's what put a stop to the things that were happening. And she said whenever Sadie, our dog, would start freaking out, she would say the prayer, and she felt like that would help. So obviously, like, take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. I'm just telling you my experiences. I'm laying it out. I'll let you decide what you think. But yeah, so I feel like that is like the bulk of it. There was small instances here and there. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm guessing this will probably be the last part though. So, yeah, I hope you guys have a good one. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay, I can't get over the fact that she says her bed was just pulled into the middle of the room. And the fact that her parents, who don't really believe in that kind of thing, are also like, I genuinely have no idea how this could have happened. I don't know how to explain it. Like, it feels like something out of The Conjuring. You come back in the middle of the night after going to the bathroom and it's like 3 a.m. and your bed's just in the middle of the room. I feel like a good majority of people have beds where it's like it takes effort but you can move it. But like I have an IKEA bed where it has like the drawers and it's like sturdy. And with all the stuff that's in the drawers, it's really difficult to move. Like even movers have a hard time moving it when I have moved, hence the movers. I'm imagining that, like, I could not for the life of me move that. Even if I had, like, super strength, I could not move my bed if I tried. So I'm imagining walking into my room and my bed just being displaced, because there's no way that that could be possible without some kind of insane paranormal intervention. I mean, I'm thinking, like, demonic. Again, like, I'm feeling bad energy from this. I don't even know how to put it into words because it makes me that uncomfortable and freaked out just thinking about it. Our next Who Talks About user, Cecilia Darlin.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So I have a quick story time for you guys about a haunted house. My daughter likes me to tell this story to her friends because it is pretty interesting. Okay, so me and my kids relocated to this beautiful house in Atlanta, Georgia, and I picked it out over the internet, never seen it. So we get there, we pull up to the house. First red flag is the house is completely covered with spiders. Whole door from top to bottom covered with like daddy long legs spiders. We don't do spiders. We are very much city folks. We don't do no bugs, none of that. But it's completely covered in spiders. We get it cleaned off. We get in the house. We do a tour. I knew there was a basement. It was supposed to be finished. We get down to the basement. My dog would not go down to this basement. She did not like the thought of even going near that basement door. So we get down to the basement and notice that there's an extra door, a room that was not mentioned on the website. So we go in there and the room has like shelving, no windows, just an odd little room. And the downstairs basement back door to the outside has these iron hooks and a 2x4 that is over the front door to where I wouldn't be able to lift it. I don't know who could lift it, but that is how they have the door locked, is with the 2x4 across the door. So the way we can go outside is through the balcony and then down the stairs, the balcony, back patio and down the stairs. So, things started happening odd in the house. The one time I did have to go down to the basement. I can't remember what for, but my dog had went with me. And as soon as she got down there, she used the restroom. My dog is very much house trained. You could tell she was nervous, she was scared, she was anxious, and just used the bathroom. Couldn't hold it, nothing. I was like, okay, this is weird. The energy down there was also strange. There was a, like furnace room down there, and the wall was splattered with like red paint. It wasn't painted, it just was kind of like throwing some paint on there. It looks like it was covering something up where the furnace and the breaker box was. Again, the energy was just so odd down there. I didn't like it, she didn't like it, we didn't have no reason for going down there. So one of the major things that happened in the house was one of the living rooms had 2 ceiling fans right next to each other. And the ceiling fans would always come on randomly at high speed together, both of them. And they would just be knocking, like going so fast that they're like swinging. And I would turn them off, go to the kids as usual, like, kids, stop turning the fans on. They were like, Mom, I'm not turning the fan on. Yes, you are. I just turned them off. They would say, Mom, we didn't go in there. We didn't turn the fans on. So that happened about 3 or 4 times. The fans would just turn on high speed on their own, and they just would swing really, really hard. And I would have to go and turn them off. And I was like, okay, this is weird. The kids are saying they're not turning the fans on. They just keep coming on their own. So then another time, me and my daughter are sitting down. I'm doing some work in our dining room, and she's doing homework. She's in kindergarten. My youngest was in kindergarten at the time. And she's like, Mommy, did you hear that? I'm like, what? She was like, somebody is talking. And I was like, it's just us in the house, baby. I don't hear anybody talking. She's like, Mommy, somebody said, hey, to me. And I was like, what? She was like, yeah, they got my ear and they said, hey, in my ear. But you could hear it. Could you hear it? And I was like, no, I didn't hear it. It's just us in here. And she's like, somebody's talking to me, Mommy. I was like, okay, let's pack up our stuff and we're going to go in the living room and turn the TV on. I didn't want to seem alarmed, and I didn't want her to feel like what she said isn't true. So I was like, okay, let's go in the living room. I'm like, okay. So I called my friend. I'm like, hey, shit's going on in this house. I don't know what's going on, but she's like, let's sage the house. Maybe it just needs to be like cleansed, and because I just been praying, because the energy was off, and I just was praying over my kids and the energy in the house. So she comes, she sages, and things get weirder. Things absolutely get weirder. So there's a time I was walking my dog. I'm walking my dog. I go to walk in the house, and I can hear my kids like running down the stairs, like, Mommy, 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 Mommy. And I'm like, what? And I'm walking in the door. I'm like, what's wrong? And they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. They're like, no, are you okay? I'm fine. It's my daughters. And they look shook. They look scared. And I was like, why? And they're like, we heard you screaming. We heard you screaming like you are in pain, like something is wrong. So we come running down the stairs to come help you. I was like, I wasn't in the house. I was outside walking the dog. And they're like, no, Mommy, we heard you. I swear we heard you. And they're like in tears. And I'm like, you guys, I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't really know what to tell them because I'm nervous, and this house is scaring the hell out of me as well. So I'm just like, I'm fine. It's okay. Everything's okay. Let's just go inside. So as we are getting ready to relocate, so I wasn't staying in that house. Other things was going on. It's for another day. I can tell you guys more stories, but other things are going on, and I'm like, it's time to get up out of here. So I'm getting ready to we're packing up. Getting ready to go, and I had a pod, and so I'm cleaning down the fridge, just wiping everything off, and I had a stainless steel fridge, and I'm like wiping the fridge, and it looked like somebody had put little like the magnet block letters on my fridge everywhere, and I'm wiping, and my oldest daughter comes in, and I ask her, I was like, hey, have you ever seen these on this fridge? And as I say, have you ever, and I wipe, the words have you ever spelled out, but it's flipped backward, like mirrored on that fridge, pop up. So if you know when you wipe down a stainless steel fridge, you wipe it and it like smears and it like disappears, and whatever you wipe should be gone. No, perfectly across it says, have you ever? I looked at her. I said, do you see this? She says, yes, Mommy, I see it. I said, oh, hell no, we ain't staying here tonight. We's not staying here tonight. So I called my best friend, like, hey, bestie, we come to spend the night tonight. So we're gonna get this packed. So we are finishing packing up the pod, and the neighbors see us packing up, and they drive up to us. Mind you, I've never talked to them. My daughter went to school and caught the bus with their son. I've never spoken to them. So they drive up, and they're like, oh, are you guys leaving so soon? And I'm like, yeah, we're just heading back to Vegas. She's like, oh, you're just leaving? And her husband's like, everything okay? And I was like, yeah, we're just relocating back, you know, Atlanta ain't for us. And the wife says, so how's the house? That house never has nobody stay there for longer than 2 or 3 months. And I was like, oh, really? She says, yeah, nobody really stays here. And she's like, it's kind of odd when nobody's in that house. We hear screams coming from that house, and we hear loud music, and we hear laughter, but mostly screams coming from the house when nobody is living in that house. And I told her, I said, some interesting things have happened while we were living there. And she was like, really? And I said, yeah. And I didn't tell her anything else. We just kept packing, and the husband was like, yeah, that house has a lot of stuff going on, like lights would be on or lights would be off when nobody is there. And they were like, but are you guys okay? And I was like, yeah, we're fine. We're leaving tonight. And they were like, good. You need to make sure your family is safe. That's all they said. You need to make sure your family is safe. And I was like, you are correct. Nice meeting y'all. We getting up out of here. And I left and did not look back. I did try to do some research on that house when things first started happening. There wasn't anything really to be found. Nothing had happened in that house. But yes, nobody stayed in that house for more than a couple months. Even the owners. I don't know. That's our story.
I don't know why it kind of irks me that like no one warned them or gave them a heads up once they moved in there, that they just like let them figure it out on their own. And they're like, oh, so how is it after they've already experienced all this stuff and been freaked out? At least if they would have been aware, like, you know, they already signed the lease or whatever, but at least if they're aware before they're physically there for too long, they can kind of mentally prepare and maybe be a little less scary. But it irks me every time I hear a story like this where the neighbor's like, so how is it? I'm like, you weren't going to warn me? You weren't going to let me know what I was in for? You're just going to like watch out and wait to see if something crazy happens? You're going to benefit from my struggling with this situation? I mean, I'm glad that she did the right thing, was able to just like get out of there before anything really bad happened. But yeah, I mean, the fact that the neighbors knew something was up with that house and no one warned her, it's crazy. Our next TikToks with the user, From Scratch 1922.
Hey guys, believe it or not, this is the 3rd attempt of making this video. I literally just recorded this video again minutes ago, tried to upload it and it deleted again. I recorded it yesterday after the incident that I'm about to attach to the back end of this video. When I went home to complete it, it no longer existed. So this is my 3rd and final time. If something happens, I'm just not doing the video again. Okay, so the incident that happened yesterday, got up around 7-something in the morning, did my daily thing, took my dogs out for a walk to the dog park, fed the dogs, started the breakfast for the kids. Now we're like 8-something in the morning. Both kids are up, sitting at the table, and I already served them their breakfast. And as I'm going back in the kitchen to start cleaning up, I noticed that I left the milk carton on the counter. So I went to grab the milk carton, opened the refrigerator, put the milk in there, and slowly aided the door shut. After the door closed, mind you, didn't slam it shut, didn't force it, nothing, just kind of glided with my hand after the door shut. Okay, so on my refrigerator, we have magnetic little letters. My daughters always tamper with those all the time. After the door shut, the letters grouped together and flew off the door and landed on the carpet in front of the front door. When I say flew, I mean like flew, like where I didn't know what it was prior to it landing. I was like, what the? And then boom, landed on the floor by the front door. So it startled me, like, oh my God, like I'm processing what happened. And I'm thinking like, how the hell did the letters fly off the door after it shut? So as that's going through my mind, I go over to the front door, which is just steps away from the refrigerator. And I go to pick up the letters and I draw my hand back like, oh my God, because the letters that actually flew off the door spelled my daughter's name. Now that in itself is nuts, right? I guess the part that is kind of lingering in my mind is that my daughter does not have a common name at all whatsoever. It's a simple name, but it's not common. Her name is Zaya. We spell it Z-I-A-H. And on the carpet, how it laid out almost was in the series of how it's spelled. So you have to see the video for yourself. Now, that's going to be sheer coincidence. I understand that. However, if the name Tom flew off and fell in order, I would be fucking spooked. But for it to be my daughter's name that fell off, and you have to see the video for yourself. I couldn't get to the phone fast enough to record it because I'm like, there's no way no one's going to believe that story. Again, my kids were sitting in the kitchen. My daughter got up like, what? And saw it for themselves. And it was just very odd. So tell me, coincidence or should I be afraid? Because right now especially now that the video deleted itself twice. So I'm gonna attach the video to the back end of this one. See for yourself and then comment down below. Let me know if you think it's a coincidence or should I pack my stuff and run? 1 second. Okay, so I know this is gonna sound crazy as hell, but I'm up this morning putting the kids' breakfast together. I go to put the milk carton back in the refrigerator and the kids' letters on the fridge flew off of the refrigerator and in this pile, okay? Now, these are the letters that fell off. This is where it gets crazy. The letters spell my daughter's name. Her name is Zaya, Z-I-A-H. Look at this. Look at this. Look. Z-I-A-H. What the hell is going on? Coincidental or very suspicious, I don't know, but this is freaking me the hell out. This is scary. What are the odds that the letters on my daughter's name, the letters in my daughter's name, somehow fell off the refrigerator? Almost in the order in which you spell it. The A and the H were stuck together, the Z and the I. You saw it before I touched it. I had to get this on camera. Here are the letters on the refrigerator. See? Look at the letters. And somehow, her name fell off and flew all in the same spot. I am so scared right now.
I don't know. I would almost feel like that's some kind of a threat. Like, I'd be like, why are you like using my child's name? Why are you spelling out my child's name? Like, what do you want with her? Why are you like mind your business. Forget about my children. Focus on me if you're trying to be all spooky and paranormal and stuff. I don't know. I would not like that. I would take that as like a threat against me, that you're like threatening my child or something. I would definitely go into mama bear mode if I were her. Our next TikTok's with the user disb1 6.
I just want to hear some crazy ass fucking shit. So my daughter sends me a message. Mom, what the fuck are you doing? What do you mean? I was asleep. Whoa, Life 360 says you're out in the middle of the woods. She sends me a screenshot. I am in fact out in the middle of the motherfucking woods, but I was actually dreaming. Yeah. So is like Life 360 attached to my fucking soul now or something? The fuck?
I don't know. That feels like a bad omen to me. There was one time that I was like on a picnic and I wasn't looking at my phone and my friend saw my location. He was like freaking out because he thought I was in the middle of a pond or something. I was having a picnic next to a pond, but my location was showing that I was in the pond and he started freaking out. He was like, oh my God, are you alive? Are you alive? And I wasn't answering because I was having a picnic and I wasn't paying attention to my phone and he was panicking. I was alive and I was fine, and it was just my location dot was a little bit off. But in this situation, she's like asleep in her house and it's showing that she's in the middle of the woods. I mean, that's not even like a little bit of the dots in the wrong location mistake. You know, technology messes up, but being in the middle of the woods when you're not even anywhere near the middle of the woods, I don't know, that would seem like a bad omen to me. Maybe that would also feel like a threat. Like, am I going to end up in the woods? Is this predicting my future? I don't know. Our next 3 TikToks are by the user skpiercehaunted. I really like the way that they demonstrate that no amount of stomping or like breezes are going to knock the ball off the stairs. So you know that this is definitely something paranormal. I think it's extra eerie when spirits kind of play with balls like that because it kind of gives into the idea that it could be something evil pretending to be a child and pretending to be playful, but also is just like, where is this coming from that it's like moving this object? I think it's so interesting to see these clips, but it's just so eerie at the same time. Our next TikTok's with the user hauntedlagirl.
Me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, one, Audacity, I really think that video that you made is really haunted because myself, and I know based on other videos that you made, others have had some issues trying to stitch this video with this app glitching, and I'm already at my 5th attempt because my app or this phone has been glitching seriously. Oh, but second, as I'm struggling with the glitches of this app, trying to record this video, there's this massive windstorm that occurred outside, like howling outside. And unfortunately, we left the window to my bathroom open on the 2nd level and it knocked something down to the ground. So that happened and now it's quiet. So I don't know. I'm hoping that this goes well, but here we go. I've shared the story twice on this app, so please take it with a grain of salt, but I promise you that what I'm about to tell you really did happen. And I had justification and verification of this occurrence. And I also have pictures of it as proof or evidence, but I digress. So I've been researching and investigating the paranormal for almost 10 years. I even have a podcast talking about everything that I research and everything that's haunted in and around Los Angeles. I'm also from a very haunted city, New Orleans, so I've seen enough and had things happen to me, but nothing compared to what I'm about to tell you. In 2018, I was picking up a sewing machine from a sewing machine vacuum cleaner repair shop in Burbank, and I've been working with this company for several years. So on one particular evening, I go to the shop to pick up a sewing machine that needed repair. I go inside, I pay for the repairs. The manager who knows me asks if he, can help me load the machine into my car. I said yes. So he does so. We chatted outside, said our goodbyes. I get in my car and I record a TikTok to send to my friend. After I sent it, she sends me a message back saying, LOL, I like the soundbite, but who's standing in front of your car? Or it looks like someone's in your car. I don't know, but there's this weird reflection on the lenses of your sunglasses. So I'm gonna show you the still shot of the video and I'm gonna show you the up close version as well. But when I went back to look at it, it gave me massive chills down my back, but here it is. So as you can see right here, there's a face. It looks like a face. And when I first posted this video, many people were like, no, that's your reflection. Trust me, I thought that was me too, but then I noticed, wait, I'm wearing red lipstick and I'm also wearing gold hoop earrings. And I did a close-up of this image and I'm like, that is not me though, because it looks very masculine and it looks like it has like a beard, a stubble, and it looks like whoever is in this picture is bald. Definitely looks like a man, and he is wearing these massive sunglasses. And so I send this video and these images to some friends of mine who are in the paranormal field. They're completely perplexed. They're like, Tammy, I don't know what that is, but I hope it doesn't follow you home. To which I remember sitting in my car saying, whatever was in this image or my video, you're not welcome in my space. Because at that time, I was doing a lot of paranormal investigations, so Lord knows how open I was to having these things appear in front of me, if you know what I mean. We'll get to that later. So the very next day, I'm running errands and I stop in a coffee shop to grab coffee just to take a little break. I sit down with my coffee and something tells me to call the shop. Right when I call, the manager, Matt, answers and I'm like, Matt, this is Tammy. I have something to ask you. And it's all out of respect and I'm very serious about this, but bear with me, okay? Is your shop haunted? And without hesitation, he's like, yes. And I told him I caught something on my camera when I was recording a video in front of the shop. And this image that appeared on the lenses of my glasses looks like a man. And he pauses again. He's like, okay. And I asked him, what do you think it is? Like, who do you think it is? How long has this been happening? Can you elaborate? He said, yes, that's Frank. And I'm like, great, you gave it a name. And I'm like, who's Frank? And he said, well, Frank used to work in the shop a few years back and he died on his way to work. And he died of a heart attack as he was riding his bike to work, and I was the last person that he spoke to right before he passed. And he literally passed away almost a half a mile away from the store. And ever since his passing, weird things have been happening in and around the shop, and they still happen. Things from tools in our workstations disappearing and reappearing in different places. Footsteps and a man's voice in the back room when no one's there. Lights flickering on and off and things falling off the shelves. I asked him, like, why do you think that is Frank? He said, because this is all he knew. He was a man of very little means. He didn't have friends. He didn't have anything. He had us and this job. He said he would come back. I asked him if I could bring him the pictures and video to show him. And he said, yeah, come by tomorrow. The owner will be here and we'll take a look at it. The next day when I got there and I showed the owner and Matt the video and the pictures, their faces turned completely white. And the look that they had on their face was like they were looking at a very old friend of theirs. And they said, that is Frank. 100%. That is exactly what he looked like. And I asked him, do you have a picture of him? And they said no, because Frank wasn't the type of guy to take pictures. He didn't like his picture being taken. And he was, very old school. He had these big paw Terminator looking glasses. They were like sunglasses that elderly people wear. And we would always joke about him wearing those glasses. He had a flip phone. He had a bike. He didn't have a lot, but all he had was us and this job. A few weeks later, I go and ask a friend of mine who's a psychic medium about what happened to me. I showed him the pictures and the video, and he was like, Tammy, it makes sense because you do so many investigations that you've opened yourself so much to these things occurring. And, little do you know, you're very sensitive. Like, you're really, really sensitive to the point where you can actually see these things now. And that made sense. And ever since then, I took a little break. I definitely took a little break from it. And I still see things every now and then. But yeah, I still, remember Frank and will never forget this occurrence. But like I said, take it with a grain of salt.
I think situations like this are why I really believe in the paranormal, because the fact that they know this entity that showed up in the background of her photo is absolutely crazy to me. I mean, it's like this man is showing back up at this place that he used to frequent. And I think what makes me really believe about it is just the fact that it's not a random coincidence. It's not just something that happens to look like a person in the background. It's like, it looks like this person who frequents this shop. And, he's since passed. And it's so crazy to me, the coincidence of it, that I think it can't be a coincidence. It can't just be like a few shapes that happen to look like this guy. I genuinely believe that it is him. Our next 7 TikToks are by the user RudeBeetle6. Now, the first one has words on the screen, so I'm going to read that aloud for those of you who are just listening. When someone talks about growing up in a haunted house, but we had to wait till we were in the car to talk about what happened that week because my mom had a strict no talking about it while it's around.
I'm not that good at telling stories, but I could make more documentaries than The Conjuring has movies out of the paranormal stuff I've experienced growing up, which I know is like a pretty bold claim. But I have lived in not 1, not 2, but 3 haunted houses. And that's not including the fact that my grandfather had to have an exorcism performed on him more than once when my mom was a child. And then whatever was attached to him just kept following the family. So there's a lot of stories, and I promise you'll get sick of me listening to these. So I'm gonna go all the way back to the beginning with the first house and the first things that I can remember, just so it's easier to keep track, and then I might jump around a little bit as I remember, because like I said, I'm not very good at telling stories. So the first thing I can ever remember, the first like paranormal experience I can ever remember, I was maybe 17 or 18, and my mom was telling us stories about my dad growing up because he had passed away when I was really young. So then like every year on the anniversary of his death, she shares like a bunch of stories, right? Well, one of these times, something had like jogged my memory, right? And I randomly remembered this old man who used to come give us like this giant bag of Dum Dum lollipops. Like I didn't even know they sold bags these big. And I was like, hey mom, do you remember that creepy old man that used to always bring lollipops over to us? What was the deal with that? And so then my mom asked me if I remembered the little girl that I used to play with when we lived in that house. So this first house we didn't live in very long. This is the first home that my parents had bought. I think I was about 4 years old, almost 5, and then my sister was only a year old. And we had only lived in that house for about 3 years until my dad had passed away. And then we moved into my grandparents' home, which was the second house. But back to the story. So I was like, yeah, I remember her. Was she like his granddaughter or something? And my mom goes, no. So then my mom starts telling me the story. I had this little friend that I would play outside with. One of these days that I was outside playing with her, my mom was in the kitchen. She could see me out in the yard through the kitchen window playing in our yard. This was like 2001, right? So like random creepy men just walking into your yard to talk to your children was not really a thing yet. So you can imagine her surprise when she glances up out of the window and there's an old man talking to her 4-year-old daughter 10 feet from the back door. So my mom does what any rational woman does. She runs out the back door by herself, nothing in hand, to demand to know why this old man is talking to me. Turns out this old man was one of our neighbors, and he was asking me questions about my friend that I played in the yard with. Gosh, I can't remember her name, but I can like vaguely remember what she looked like, because I mean I was only like 4 years old, so the fact that I even remembered this at all is crazy. Okay, and this is the part in her story where I'm getting like, okay, so like this man is trying to kidnap my bestie? You just let this creepy old man like walk up into our yard to give us lollipops? Like what happened to, was taking candy from strangers not a thing then yet? It was like 2001, but come on. So then my mom continues, and he goes, I was asking your daughter questions about her imaginary friend. Yeah. Turns out this old man was one of our neighbors that had lived in one of the houses behind us, like directly behind us. So like the way it was set up, road, house, backyard, creepy old wooden fence, backyard, then house. He lived in like one of these houses over here. So then he starts explaining to my mom that he's been hearing me outside playing with my imaginary friend. And the more he listened, the more the imaginary friend I was playing with started to sound like his sister. I was like, Mom, that's not making any sense, because how could his sister be my age when this man is like 80 years old? Or do I just remember him being older than he actually was? And then my mom goes, no, that is his sister. Correct words, that was his sister, because turns out when he was a child, he lived in the area, and he had a younger sister, or an older sister. Can't remember if she was older or younger. I'll have to ask. She had passed away. She was like 2-3 years old, so she was like really close to my age when she had passed. But she had passed from like some kind of fever or something. I don't remember what it was. So you can imagine my surprise when I find out that all of my memories of my first childhood friend was in fact a imaginary friend. Oh, and this is something I did not know. Apparently, she used to go into our house, and she would go in the basement when my parents put the dog in the basement for the night to play with the dog. And so my mom would just hear her in the middle of the night playing with the dog in the basement. She would throw one of the balls for the dog. And I was like, was the basement creepy? I was like, is that why you guys always had like that giant bolt lock on the basement door? And she was like, no, we had that on there so you couldn't get in because you were a visually impaired child and the steps didn't have railings on either side. Yeah, so I was like 17, 18 when I found out that my first childhood friend was a ghost. Apparently 4 years old is like that sweet spot where you're just old enough to remember things, but not old enough to know the difference between the living and the dead, apparently. But I have like so many more stories for you guys, I promise. I'll try to get to as many as I can tonight. I'm on my lunch break right now, but I promise I'll post more stories after I'm done with work. But I've been writing down a list of like all the experiences and things I can remember, plus some stuff my mom experienced growing up. This is just a fraction of what I have to write down yet. But I also had the idea to download like one of those ghost speaking voice box apps on my phone and then going around my apartment. I don't know how much I believe in like the apps for ghost hunting, but maybe it'll just be like something fun to do. I think there's definitely something in the basement of my apartment, but I've never like felt anything in my apartment specifically. Bestie, I promise you there's gonna be so many parts of the series, y'all are gonna be sick of me by the time I'm done. So I posted part 1 last night of like the very first thing that I could remember of like my paranormal experiences growing up. But I did pin a video to my page earlier today going over like the full timeline because whatever has been haunting me has been haunting my mom and my grandfather before her. It's like 10 minutes, but I like tried to squish everything in as much as possible. So there's definitely some stuff that I left out. So we're starting with like my experiences and the stuff that I can remember first, and then we'll go back to all the stuff that my mom remembers growing up. So the next thing that I can remember happening after that is an evil Furby, but I feel like everybody's owned an evil Furby. So like, you know, you take the batteries out, it still says really weird stuff, and then you burn it and it screams. So we're just gonna skip over that. There's really not much else to that besides what I just said. So after that, there are more ghost children, and now a shadow figure has entered the chat. So basically, where the shadow figure came from, you see, my grandmother used to live above a bar where she worked at, and then she bought a house. But when she bought a house, the realtors had packed everything from the previous owners and put it in the basement. So she did not find out till after buying the house that the previous owners had basically left everything, didn't take any other belongings in the middle of the night, and just got the heck up out of there. Turns out, not only did they leave all their belongings behind, but they left their creepy little shadow figure too. And some children's spirits. So I am now 6 at this point, and from what I remember going to my grandmother's house to play with the neighbor children. And then I asked my mom about it. And you know what my mom says? Those weren't the neighbor children that you were playing with. Turns out they actually were completely harmless. They were just attached to some of the toys that had been in the house. And so my mom told my grandmother to just keep those toys outside, and I would just play with the children outside and don't let me invite them in to play. They never really bothered her, but there was something else inside the house that did. So the creepy shadow figure, I don't remember seeing it, so I had to get like the full thing from my mom, but I do remember being thrown out of a rocking chair. And so my mom told me basically what had happened is my grandmother was standing there, I'm in the rocking chair playing, she sees the shadow figure fly down the stairs, beeline straight towards me, and throw me out of the chair. And then I remember her picking me up off the floor and getting the heck up out of there. Turns out this shadow figure really did not like her cat. And so after I got yeeted out of the chair, the cat was directly behind the chair and she had gotten tangled up in the phone cord lines and she was choking. So my grandmother saved her cat and then decided it was probably best to rehome her before something more permanent happened to the cat. My uncle ended up raising her, and she was mean. She was really, really mean. So I don't think my grandmother lived there very long before passing away from breast cancer. And so then my dad, being the oldest sibling of his family, I think he had an older sister, but I've literally never met her. But my dad was basically the one to go over, pack up all her stuff out of the house. And then you know what he did? Because nobody learned. He took that stuff and stored it at our house. And do you know what came with it? You got it. The shadow figure. Now, I'll have to ask my mom because I don't know if, like, the haunting stuff from the shadow figure started before or after he had passed away, because he had passed away about 6 months in a car accident after my grandmother. Oh, but boy, was it dark. So if you don't want to hear the really, really scary stuff, I would maybe watch this when the sun's back out. So this thing, pure evil. Pure evil. It had, one of my dad's friends had been staying with us after my dad had passed to, like, help my mom with everything. Pushed him down the stairs. One night, my mom was sleeping in bed. It's probably about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and she hears somebody coming into the bedroom. So she looks, and she sees a full-body apparition of my grandmother, the one that passed away from breast cancer. But it was not her, because she said she started to smile. This really, really big grin, and it was just full of razor-sharp teeth. Oh gosh, I don't know for sure, but I think she may have said that it had screamed at her. It used to make my sister cry a lot as well. That particular character we will see in a later part, quite a few years down the road. So when we left that house, we left everything behind, and we literally moved to a whole new state, and I will pick up with part 3 tomorrow night. Alright, buckle up, bestie, and hold on to your socks. I got some crazy stories about living in this haunted house. And I didn't just live in this haunted house once, I lived here twice. First time we lived here, I was about 8 years old. My father had passed away the year before. My mom ended up moving us into my grandparents' house. So we lived with them the first time. This was my mom's childhood home. My grandfather had been in the military growing up, and so when he retired when she was 14 and then bought this house. This was their first, like, permanent residence. Because he had been in the army since before my mom was born. They had owned one other place that I am aware of while my mom was growing up that had also been haunted. Or well, it wasn't really the place that was haunted, it was a person. And my mom has some terrifying stories of growing up about the experiences that she saw in that house. So when I do get around to telling her stories, I want to be a little bit more respectful and make sure that everything is as accurately told from her story as possible. So first time we lived in this house, I remember being absolutely terrified to sleep in this one bedroom. It had used to be my mom and my aunt's bedroom growing up. And I remember seeing shadows and faces moving through the bedroom in the middle of the night. And then when I got older, I had asked my mom about that. And I was like, hey, do you remember how I used to be, like, terrified of the dark, especially sleeping in that bedroom? And then I told her about how I used to see faces and shadows in the bedroom. And I chalked up like, oh, haha, little kid imagination. And then my mom looks at me and she says, no, your aunt and I experienced the same exact thing when we stayed in that bedroom growing up. I wasn't old enough to start catching on to all of the stuff yet that was going on, and they didn't want to scare me, so they just kind of were like, oh, it's fine, you're just scared of the dark, there's nothing to be scared of. When there was, in fact, something to be scared of in the dark. Second time I lived in this house, my grandparents had moved out and my mom moved us in. She took over the house and she rented it from my grandfather so that he didn't lose the house, because he had to take out a second mortgage on the house after they had moved so that he could pay for my grandmother's medical bills because she had started getting really, really sick in the end. I don't remember anything super creepy or scary happening the first year we lived in this house. It wasn't until my grandmother had passed away that, like, weird stuff started happening again. One of the scarier things that I can remember, my uncle had been living with us at the time. I think he was, like, going through a divorce or something. I can't exactly remember what. I just know him and my aunt had split up. So the way the upstairs bedroom was set up, now this is important. So you walk up the stairs, immediately on the right, facing this way, is the bathroom door. Then directly in front of you were 2 bedroom doors. And then immediately on the left, right here, was the bedroom was the smaller bedroom that my uncle had been staying in. That used to be his bedroom as a child growing up in this house. So my mom was sleeping in my grandparents' old bedroom. My sister and I had my mom and my aunt's bedroom again, and then my uncle was sleeping in the smaller bedroom. So it was middle of the night, probably 2-3 o'clock in the morning. We were all sleeping. And then we hear somebody, or something rather, running up and down the hallway. Now, this hallway was only 6-7 feet long, maybe. It wasn't that long of a hallway. So we all thought that, like, maybe it was my 2 baby sisters at the time who had been, like, 2 and 3 years old just playing in the hallway. So we thought they were running up and down this hallway. And the house was really old, so it was shaking the floorboards in all 3 bedrooms. So I wake up, my mom wakes up, and my uncle wakes up, and we all go to open the door at the same time to see who's in the hallway, and we scared the crap out of each other because nobody was expecting anybody else to have also been woken up. So we're all just kind of like, oh, like, we thought you were running through the hallway. No, I thought you were running through the hallway. We thought it was the 2 little ones running through the hallway. They were asleep the whole time. Now, weird stuff had been going on, like, by this point, so we were already used to, like, stuff like this happening. So we'd all just kind of, like, laugh nervously, go back to bed. A few minutes later, it starts happening again. Something's running up and down through this little hallway, shaking the floorboards, and it's vibrating the floorboards in all 3 bedrooms. I am not the person that runs toward the scary noise, right? So after the first time not seeing anybody there, I wasn't about to go check it out a second time. My mom and my uncle did get up, and I could hear them in the hallway talking before going back to bed. I don't want to make this video too long, so I'll end it there for now. I have another story time for you guys, part 4. You don't have to watch this in order. They're all completely different stories. So, we move out of my grandparents' house, the one that had the very not so nice entity, and we move in with my mom's boyfriend. Now, allegedly, somebody had committed self-deletion in this house. If I'm remembering correctly, I think the story was that it was a mom with kids. But I could be wrong because I also have never found any proof of this happening. But this happened like a long time ago before he even bought the house. So in his house, he had a mimic. And if you don't know what a mimic is, it's just kind of this thing that yells for you in the voice of your mom or your mom's boyfriend or your siblings. And it gets really creepy really fast because sometimes it sounds really angry. One particular time that I can remember is I was in my bedroom and I hear my mom yelling for me from her bedroom, and it sounds like I'm in trouble. It's like that mom voice, like, you messed up big time, yelling for me. And so I get up, I get all the way up to her bedroom on the 3rd floor because I was in my room at the time, right? So that was on the 2nd floor. Her bedroom's in the attic. Get up there, she's not there. So then I go down to the 1st floor. She's not there either. So then I go down into the basement and I finally find her and I'm like, hey mom, what did you need? I heard you yelling for me. And she goes, I wasn't yelling for you. And I'm like, yes, you were. I was like, you were just up in your room. And she's like, no, I've been down here all morning. And then we both realized what had happened and we just kind of, and then I go back to my room. Another time I was also in my room. Side note, it was becoming like a problem of it like coming into my room. So I did this like cleanse. I was like 16, 17 years old. I found this cleansing thing online, did that, hung a little protection thingy above my door so then it couldn't come into my room anymore. So another time I heard it yelling for me out in the hallway. I get up, open the door, nobody's there. I go downstairs, I see my sisters sitting in the living room and I'm like, hey, where's mom? I just heard her yelling for me. And they're like, mom's not home. Mom hasn't been home for a couple hours now. She's out with her boyfriend running errands. So yeah, that was the only thing that really happened that was the only thing that happened in his house, aside from the weird mimic thing. Nothing too crazy. Over 2,000 of you guys have followed me for my paranormal experiences, so I want to address the comments that I get the most of. These are in no particular order, by the way. So, first comment is, Bestie, I don't think it's the house that was haunted, and to that I have to say I am well aware. Unfortunately, the video that went semi-viral, I could not fit the phrase, my mom had really strict rules growing up in a haunted house that my grandparents used to own when my grandfather had a demonic entity attached to him, and it decided not to follow him again, and instead decided to stay in the house after we moved in. Would not fit in the video. Another comment that I get frequently is, just yell at it and it'll go away. That does work. In most cases, except when it's a demonic haunting. And in that case, that's the very last thing you want to do. You're essentially acknowledging it, you're essentially inviting it to get closer to you, you're giving it permission to get closer to you, and that is how you end up with attachments. So avoid it if possible, and if you think it's a child or a little girl, it's probably not. I also get comments, oh my god, that sounds like the Conjuring house. You lived in a real life Conjuring house? Yes and no. I've experienced similar things from the Conjuring movie. But again, the Conjuring movie is kind of exaggerated. The only thing I've never seen with my own eyes, is somebody being lifted by invisible forces and thrown. But I have experienced a lot of similar things to the Conjuring house while living in that house. And then some. Which brings me to the last comment. Be careful talking about it because you can bring it back, and you can't bring something back that never left. A lot of people had mentioned about getting the church involved, but way before I was born, my grandparents got the church involved on more than one occasion, including getting a priest to bless the place, bless everybody, and the activity would die down for a while, but then start back up. My mom has seen some crazy things as a child. And also, you were right. After I shared my first couple of paranormal experience stories on here, we started having some activity that was eerily similar to that house. So, since going to the church had not worked for my grandparents, and we did go to church for about 3 out of the 5 years we lived in that house, and we were going like 6 days a week, and it just made the activity in the house worse. My mom and I went last month to seek out some alternative practices that could help get rid of it, and it has worked so far. I don't want to make this video too long. I could do another video discussing that, but it was a lot of banishing it, and then because it had been around so long, it left a hole, right? And so we had to, like, there's a lot of bringing in protection and blessings and love and light to fill that hole back up so that it could not come back. It had no place to come back to, if that makes sense.
That is so crazy to me. The first story, how she's talking about, she's literally playing with a ghost. So this guy comes out, somehow realizes that this little girl that's his neighbor is playing with his sister who had passed when she was a child. I mean, what a crazy thing to realize. But then also the fact that I'd be a little nervous going out there and like even saying that to her mom, being like, hey, I think this is like my dead sister that she's talking to, because that would come across as, you know, creepy or like weird. But that's just, it's such a crazy thing to experience. Imagine like you're just sitting there enjoying your cup of coffee by an open window and you hear this little girl playing outside and you realize that they're playing with your sister who passed, like the ghost of your sister. That would be a crazy thing to experience. And even crazier realizing all these years later that your childhood friend that you used to play with all the time was actually a ghost. Like everyone knew but you. Our next TikToks with user, mercipeach.
Alright, so a little backstory. Me and my family grew up in a church cult in a small town where literally everybody grew up together and everybody knew each other. This is where my aunt met my uncle, and she also had this family friend that they had all grew up together. She ended up buying a house with my uncle, and he ended up moving in with them. About a year later, my aunt gets pregnant, and come to find out this family friend that they had known all along could not mentally handle that. I don't know who all was aware, but he was very much in love with her. So much to the point where he couldn't stand her starting a family. It just absolutely broke him. First day of kindergarten, my dad wakes me up and basically tells me that this family friend is dead. And I was devastated because we all loved him. Like, he was someone that we grew up with. He would take us to the parks with my aunt. I mean, like, we all loved him so much. My aunt and my uncle move out of that house, and me, my two brothers, and my grandparents move in. He still had the Titanic poster hanging up in his closet when we moved in, that he had in his room the whole time that he lived there with my aunt and my uncle. And I kept it because it was one of my favorite movies. I remember even arguing with my grandparents, like, no, I don't want to take it down. So this is the early 2000s. I had one of those TVs that we got from a thrift store that literally had the knobs where you had to turn the channel. And I had this hairbrush, this wooden hairbrush on top of it at the time. And I remember hearing this loud bang one day as I'm watching TV. And I'm looking around and I'm like, what was that? It really scared me because it was so incredibly loud, but there was nothing in my room that had fallen or anything that could have made that sound. So I'm looking at the hairbrush. I'm walking up to my TV and I bang it on top of it. And I get kind of freaked out because it sounds pretty much like the same sound. And I brush it off. Whatever, that's weird. I'm gonna go back to watching TV. A couple nights pass and I'm laying in bed one night. It's the middle of the night. My lights have been off for hours. I open my eyes and I have my ceiling fan with my light above my head, directly above my bed. And I open my eyes and it goes from being completely dark to this glass bulb glowing. It starts off so low and it starts getting brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter, so much to the point that it started blinding me and I could not really see much. I'm screaming. I don't know what's going on. My grandparents and my brothers rush in, but of course everybody brushes it off. You know, I'm just having a nightmare, whatever. And I believed them. I was like, yeah, maybe I just had a nightmare. But I don't know how to explain this last night that I remember having a weird experience, because I was laying in bed and I was laying on my side and I remember waking up because my whole body felt like it was vibrating. And I don't know how else to explain it other than it felt like every single cell in my body, my blood, everything was just like vibrating. I had never felt that feeling before, and to this day, I have yet to ever feel that again. And after a few minutes of that goes by, I start feeling this pressure across my back and across my arm, as if somebody is kind of like spooning me. And this time, I don't scream. I don't do anything. I literally just lay there because I am in complete shock at what's happening, and I don't know what it is or what is happening. And I don't know if I should be scared. It didn't feel evil. It didn't feel like it was trying to hurt me, but it definitely didn't feel normal. So we ended up moving out of that house years later. My aunt, the house that she's in now with my uncle and her 4 kids, she has one room up there. It's this one door that leads up these stairs to one single bedroom that has such a thick, heavy energy that me and multiple people don't enjoy going up there. We try to do our best to stay out of that bedroom. And the fact that it's not just me who feels that way lets me know that there's something off. And part of me to this day wonders if this family friend is still following my aunt around. Because now that I'm thinking about it, every single house that she's lived in, I have felt really scared and afraid of for absolutely no reason. But it just feels off. And I remember one time my brother telling me this story about how he was sleeping in my little cousin's room. They had the sound machine on, it was on rain sounds, and he could hear voices coming through it. And when he told me he had a feeling that it was this family friend out of nowhere, it really kind of freaked me out. Because again, this whole time I have felt, didn't know if I was crazy, but I had a little inkling and a little feeling that he was still around. That's just the many stories that I have. I've had many different experiences, unfortunately, to where like I 100% sure I know that spirits are real. That's just one of the many stories I have, and I've honestly had so many experiences that I cannot say that spirits aren't real. I used to be a skeptic, but as Newton's law goes, energy cannot be created nor destroyed, so it has to go somewhere. And that's just my opinion, but I can't deny the experiences I've had, so yeah.
Our next TikTok spit user, Jenna Marie 29.
So let's tell some ghost stories. So this is something that actually happened to me, and I always sound crazy when I tell this story, but every once in a while I will tell like someone and they're like, do you believe in ghosts or spirits? And I'll be like, yeah, let me tell you this. And they are like, holy shit, like, you need to tell people this. This is wild. So anyway, 20 years ago, I'm 40 right now. I have a 20-year-old and she was a baby. And I lived in this little tiny old 100-year-old house. The town I live in, it's called the Tree Streets, right? So there's like elm, pine, cedar, whatever. So I'm living in this little house on the Tree Streets, and weird stuff used to happen. I used to walk in the house, like lights would flicker, all sorts of stuff. I related it to being an old house. Well, then I would start to walk in, and I would hear like old men chattering in the back, like they were playing cards or like dominoes, or like it sounded like old ranchers, like that I've been around in real life, like visiting, having a good time, having whiskeys, you know, the whole 9 yards, in my home. So I was like, this is wild. So I would like open the back windows to my house, like to the alley. And I'm like, maybe it's someone across the alley. Like they must get together and party and chit chat and have a guys group or whatever. But this happened very often. And then it became like daily. I would walk in the house and like, and you would hear cards shuffling and like, just kind of that like energy of like being in an old bar or something. I can't quite describe it, but like that's the energy I felt daily walking into my own home with a baby, a newborn. So one day, chills, I'm getting in my little shower, come to hop out, you guys. So I get out, I throw a towel around me, and I feel like breath right here on my neck. And my name's Jenna, and he's like, Jenna, breathing down my neck. I was like, you know, when you just like tense up and you're like, oh my God, someone's behind me, like something bad is about to happen. And he was like, hi, in my ear. Like I felt that puff of air in my ear, how I would now, like with my husband, like breathing on me and kissing my neck and stuff. In my home with my baby in her carrier while I took a bath. You guys, when I say I lost my shit, I freaking threw a towel on, scooped up my baby. My mom lived a couple blocks away. I ran out of that fucking house so fast. I was standing in my front yard with a towel on, with my baby, calling my mom like, yo, pick me up now. My house is fucking haunted. Now they're talking in my ear. And my mom was like so calm, so relaxed. She's a genealogist. Like that is her degree. She does ancestry. She's like, did you tell them nicely to leave, to pass over? It is time for them to pass over. You like need them to leave you alone. You are uncomfortable. Just tell them. I'm like, it's that easy? Like that's what we do? We just say, yo, get the fuck out of my house. You've been dead for 100 years. Like, blah. Anyway, long story short, that did not work for me. I literally ended up packing up my house with people in my house. I was so uncomfortable to go back in my house. I packed it up, built a new house, lived with in-laws, and got the fuck out. But anyway, people might think I'm crazy. I want to hear your stories. Yeah, are ghosts real? Are spirits real? What do you think? What do you believe in? I also have a sister that passed on, and she's come to visit me, and so has my grandma. And so totally believe in it. But yeah, let me know.
I don't know. I feel like that would be a really difficult thing to deal with, especially as a woman, that like you're hearing a bunch of men like drinking and partying and playing cards and stuff in your house. I mean, obviously they're spirits, but it would still feel threatening, like that energy of a bunch of men in your home and just that vibe. I think it would feel incredibly uncomfortable and unsafe. And especially the fact that there was like threatening and uncomfortable situations she was also dealing with from them. And then when she asked them to go away, that they did not listen. I mean, typical man. I don't blame her for needing to get out of there. I don't think I would feel safe or comfortable in that situation, even knowing that it's just paranormal activity. It's like, even from beyond the grave, they're still not respecting her wishes. Our next TikToks with user, Alex in italics.
All right, if you don't like real life ghost stories, then you're going to want to skip this video. But if you do, then stick around. When I was a kid, my father started dabbling with the occult. He joined a group of Rosicrucians, which is a witchcraft cult. And he would bring some items to the apartment where we lived in after work, and he would go into the bedroom, lock himself in. If we were in there, he'd, have us leave. And he would perform some sort of ritual or God knows what. We weren't allowed in. He didn't tell us what he was doing, but it was something to do with the witchcraft. Strange things started happening in the apartment, but eventually my mother left him, and we had to move in with family. And of course, we were very poor, so we all shared a bedroom. My mother and my sister slept in one bed. I slept in a smaller bed next to them. One night, I remember waking up at about 3 in the morning. I had been waking up at about 3 in the morning every night for a while, but on this particular night, I woke up and I was just laying there awake, and I had turned and I was facing my mother and sister's bed, when suddenly I see this blue light come out of my mother. This bright, brilliant, indescribable light that I've never seen before or since. When this light came up, it was like my mother laying there on the bed, and this thing just came up like this. It sat up. It was what you would call a ghost, a spirit, and it was my mother. Same hair, same face, same torso, arms, and because it was sitting there, the blue in her legs, it was still just sitting there like inside her legs, but her torso, she kind of sat up on the bed with her arms back, like when you're about to get up out of bed. And it's staring forward. And I guess it sensed that I was looking at it. And so it turned to look to me. And when it looked at me, again, the visible appearance of it was identical to my mother. But there was something strange in her look. It didn't have the look that my mother gives. It didn't have that same stare, that same glare or look that my mother had. You know, when a loved one looks at you and they're not okay, anyway, it was off. It was foreign. It was strange. And it was looking at me almost as if it was confused as to why I was looking at it. It was confused that I was in its presence, almost as if it was strange to it that I was looking at her. And this freaked me out. Of course, after a few seconds, and I guess after I absorbed it and processed it in my 5-year-old mind, I began to scream bloody murder. And it looked at me, it was still looking at me, and when I started to scream, it just kind of went, and it turned back forward, and it laid back down. One of the things that really stood out to me was, as bright and brilliant as this thing was, it wouldn't give off any light. It didn't give off light into the room, onto the wall, onto me. It was all contained there. And it was the most brilliant blue light. I've never seen anything like it before, anything like it since. It was a blue, almost like this color blue, but just imagine super bright. And so after it laid down and I started screaming, I jumped out of the bed and I went over to my mother's bed and I was trying to find comfort in her, but she wasn't waking up. I was basically dancing and jumping around on the bed, and it roused my sister, my older sister, who was at the time 12. And she just kind of was like, "What's wrong? Go back to bed." And I guess she thought I was having a nightmare. The next morning, I go up to my mother and she's getting ready for work. She worked at a restaurant, and I'm trying to tell her about what happened and if she remembered what happened. And I said, "Mom, can I tell you something?" And she said, "Not now, mijo, I don't have time. I'm getting ready for work." I tried the next day, and apparently I tried for about 2 weeks, my mother recounts, because after about 2 weeks of me going up to her saying, "Mom, I got to tell you something," it hit her and she said, "Okay, what's wrong with this kid? Something's on his mind and he needs to tell me something. I better pay attention." And so I recounted the story that I just told you, and she had zero recollection of this. And that was strange. And she asked me to tell it to her more than once. Over the next, few weeks, she was just shocked. She told family about it. And the story didn't change because it's a memory. It's not a story. So even years later, we remember this. This is one of the things that stood out. These things, when you're dabbling with things like witchcraft, these kinds of things will follow you around for years. This is one of many experiences. So if you're interested in hearing more about this, let me know. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think about what I just told you about. And tell me if that would freak you out.
So I kind of hate this. This is incredibly terrifying. I mean, it's a great story, but I would be so scared and uncomfortable if I were him and I experienced this. I mean, I'd freak out at first. I think that my mom had died or something and it's her ghost leaving her body. Thankfully, that's not the case. I mean, weeks later he was able to tell her because, you know, he didn't have time to tell her before then. But I'd be thinking it's like she's going into the light or something and her spirit's coming out of her body. I would be so terrified. I can't even imagine experiencing that as a child. Our final TikTok of the video is by the user edenbernethy.
A ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So I wanted to share this story for a hot minute. I've been watching a lot of these Stitches and it just, I don't know, it just reminded me of the singular experience I had growing up with the paranormal, whatever you want to call it. I believe I was about in the 10 to 12-year-old range. Growing up, I was best friends with this girl, and I would hang out at her house all the time. It was this old Victorian house, very big, old. It had like a big spiral staircase, and it was on this big piece of property, and the entire neighborhood, which was the neighborhood that I lived in, was built on the land that was originally owned by the family that built the house. So this house was way older than all of the houses around it in the neighborhood, and the street it was on was actually named after the family that built the house as well. So very old house. It always kind of had a little bit of spooky vibes. I don't know if that was just because it was old. Her mom liked to collect older like antique things as well. We would go antique shopping all the time. She had like these old dolls, a bunch of like old china decorations, porcelain, like that kind of thing. They always threw really creepy Halloween parties. But yeah, anyway, so I hung out at this house for many years throughout my childhood, and I never really had anything weird happen until this one day. We were hanging out at her house. I believe we had been previously talking about ghost things, but I'm not really sure. That could have been afterwards, sparked from this event. Anyway, we were walking up this spiral staircase to go up to her bedroom. And when you are exiting the staircase, you go into the main hallway of the second floor. And if you turn right, her room was down the hall and on the right, but straight ahead was her parents' room. And their parents' room door was open, and there was a window, and the light from the sun was coming in through the window. She walks up first, I walk up behind her. We are looking down the hallway to head towards her room, but we are looking into her mom's room. The door is open. And there is this extremely tall black figure. Looks like a man, has really like long arms, and is like leaning towards us. Now this hallway is like a decent length, so it was still like far away from us, but it felt like it was getting closer because of how it was leaning. It wasn't actually like moving, and we both felt this angry presence wash over us. Like the feeling was anger, and that was the only thing I could describe it as. It wasn't just like an uncomfortable bad feeling, it was anger. And so she walked in first, I walked in behind her. She said she blinked and it was gone. I passed behind her while looking down. As she passed in front of me, it disappeared as she blocked my view. And we both looked at each other and we screamed and we ran to her room, which was in the direction where we just saw this thing, but we just wanted to get into her room. And so something that makes it more real to me is that we both saw it. Which at the time we were like, oh my gosh, did we really just see that? Was it like a shadow? Like, you know, did the sun hit our eyes weird? So we went back out into the hallway later and we tried looking and we couldn't see what would have even, like there were no objects in front of the window. There was nothing that would have made that shape. And also it was just like the feeling as well. So the next day we told her mom about it, and her mom's face just went white. And she was just like, I wish you guys wouldn't have told me that. And we were like, what? And she said that about a month earlier, maybe a couple weeks, she had woken up in the middle of the night to go pee, and this is at night, there was no sun coming in through that window. She saw the same tall black figure, angry presence looming towards her, and she said she just put her head down, was like, I'm seeing things, and she just walked to the bathroom, walked back. When she came back into her room, it was gone. So, and that was the only experience I ever had in that house. My friend said that was the only experience that she had. She did say that because the house was so old, there is a possibility that people had passed away in that house. But yeah, we're not sure what we saw. Never saw anything like that again. And that's just what happened. Unfortunately, this girl and I are no longer friends. We ended on bad terms, like, for something completely unrelated years later. But I've always kind of wanted to reach out to her and be like, hey, do you remember this? Like, because it's been so long, I'm like doubting myself, like, did I make this up? But I want to ask her about it because I'm like curious. But anyway, yeah.
What's so interesting to me is that this is happening at like the main point of the area, if that makes sense. It's like the house that had the land that everything else was built on, and it's like happening at the main point of this haunted area. And the fact that her mom has also witnessed this as well, or the friend's mom has witnessed this as well. It's not just like kids in their imagination. The mom corroborates it and is like, oh my god, I thought that was just me that's seen that before. And I mean, the idea of something that's like trying to get super tall and kind of like leaning over, it gives like it's trying to be very dominant and scare you. And it definitely seems like that worked. I just don't think that that gives off any good energy. Like if something's trying to be tall and overpowering, if it's like trying to be, you know, nice and not freak you out, it'll kind of shrink itself maybe, you know, like how dogs show that they're not a threat by rolling over onto their back. Anything that's nice and like kind at heart wouldn't purposely try to make themselves bigger and tower over you to make you feel small. So I definitely don't think whatever's going on in that house is a good entity, and I really hope that she does reconnect with the friend so they can confirm whether or not they actually remember this happening, or if anything else has happened in the house since. But that is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on the TikToks I showed you. Feel free to tag me in any TikToks you want to see me include in a future video. My username is at the AbbeyStorySubmission. All of the creators that I featured in this video will be tagged down below in the description. I do recommend checking out their profiles. While you're at it, please check out my Instagram and TikTok. They're both linked down below in the description. Did I order something from Amazon? Probably. Anyway, I'm getting back to posting my spooky special effects makeup content over on those platforms. I also just posted a debrief about everything that's been going on with my health situation over there. I did post it on Shorts as well. You guys might have seen my community message that I sent out. However, the video that I filmed on that was like a TikTok / Instagram Reels, was 12 minutes long, and YouTube Shorts only allows 3 minutes at a time. So I had to cut it up into 5 videos. So there is like parts 1 through 5 up on my Shorts, and they are all labeled in the captions so you know which part is which, but it is a little confusing. So if you do have Instagram and TikTok and you're interested in that, I would recommend going over to those platforms to check it out, because the whole thing's all in one big clip. But if you don't have those platforms and you're interested, I just want to make sure you can still watch it here. So that's why I just decided to do the whole 5 clips on Shorts. So you are still able to watch it on here if you're interested. If you guys like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. I will pop a couple of video suggestions on the screen for you to watch next. Please click the subscribe button down below and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I post Sundays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Central Time. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Bye.